Who do you look up to? As Paul opens this letter to the church in Thessalonica, he praises them for their faithfulness and for their witness. We just heard that salutation just now, and in that opening, Paul tells them that the news of their witness has come back to them through other people. They've heard about the great deeds of the church, and he's saying, good job, church. And one of the reasons that they are becoming known as a church of great things is that they have modeled themselves after Paul, Silvanus, and Timothy. Now, it might seem that Paul is tooting his own horn here, saying, you all are so great because you are imitating me, and I'm awesome, right? But he makes a good point. We all need someone to look up to. We all need someone to imitate. Because how else are we supposed to know what is good and true and right? Who do you look up to? Who do you want to be like? Now, many of us look to celebrities or sports stars as the heroes that we want to imitate. And often this is okay if we pick the right stars. Because many of our favorite football players are real heroes in their communities. They visit hospitals and sick kids. They visit schools. They have charities that do great things for their communities. And while their skills in the game might be something that people try to imitate, I think it's far more important to imitate the ways in which they change their community. For example, Nick Easley's been getting a lot of attention lately, right? And he's made a real impact on the football field for the Hawkeyes, but he's also made an impact in this community. Now, some of that is because he's a local boy and he's making the news, but for me it's because he's willing to make an extra effort to make a difference in the life of Caden Kelso, the student at Burke. I'm new here and I don't have any idea what kind of young man Nick was when he was in Newton High School. I mean, he may have gotten into all kinds of trouble, I don't know, or he may have been a model student. But I do know that the way he has been in the last few months, it should make Newton proud. Who do you look up to? As a young person, I looked up to several people, but there are two that I want to mention today. The first one is my high school science teacher, Mr. McGrail. Now, he didn't do anything that stands out as amazing. He didn't earn any fame for any one event. However, if you ask people from Carlisle High School who, in the era that he taught, they will tell you that Mr. McGrail was a favorite. He taught chemistry, physics, trigonometry, and plane analytical geometry, right? Everybody's favorite subject. But he made them fun. He made chemistry memorable by drawing funny pictures on the board. And they weren't funny because he was talented for drawing funny things. In fact, his drawings were terrible. They were just terrible. But I know what a mole is because he drew a terrible rendition of a mole, the animal, to remind us of what a mole, the chemistry unit, is. And he did it while laughing at himself. He would talk about how wonderful this drawing was as he was kind of chuckling to himself. He also taught us what a homogeneous mixture was by talking about himself as little Danny at a Kool-Aid stand. He said that his Kool-Aid had so much sugar in it that it would never become a homogeneous mixture because all the sugar would settle at the bottom, right? I'll never forget that, and I'll always know what a homogeneous mixture is. It was hundreds of small things that Dan McGrail did every day for hundreds of students that make him someone that I would like to imitate. But mostly it was his kindness. He talked to students as if they mattered. And he expected the best out of everyone. And he encouraged them to reach for the best. He was just a good guy who lived his faith in quiet ways, but ways that made a significant impact. Who do you look up to? I also look up to my grandpa, Harold Barkley. He's a man of deep faith. And you know what? He didn't ever really talk about his faith with me, at least not with words. But as I was growing up, I watched as Harold lived out his faith. I mean, he was always showing up to stuff. I would hang out with him for a couple weeks every summer, and at least once or twice during that time, we would stop by the church to fix something. And he would go to every breakfast or dinner that the church put on. He was at every cleanup day, every mission day to his local community. We went to visit him when he turned 80. And he said that he'd been helping to build a playground at the local park. And so we went down to look at this playground that he helped build. And we ran into someone in the park that told us that Harold was always the first one to show up in the morning to start building. And he was always the last one to leave. And that he was the hardest working guy that the man had ever seen. And that was at 80 that he did that. And my grandpa still has a job at Casey's. He's over 90 now. But he works one day a week at Casey's. And he kind of stumbled into it because he likes to go to Casey's and have coffee with the guys. And he's been doing this for a long time. Well, on Fridays, the delivery truck comes at the time that the coffee guys are there. And my grandpa can't sit still and watch someone else working. He's got to jump up and get involved. And so when the delivery driver would start unloading the truck, there he would. He'd jump up, he'd start grabbing boxes and throwing them down the conveyor. And he wouldn't take no for an answer. He has to help. And he did this for months. You know, he goes to coffee, it's Friday, the truck comes, Harold jumps up. Well, one Friday there was a district manager at the Casey's, and she watches as Harold jumps up and starts unloading the truck. And she says, "What's that? Who's that?" And the local manager said, "Well, that's Harold. He does that every week. You can't stop him." And she said, "Why?" "Well, I don't know. That's just who Harold is." "Well, we can't have that," she says. "You're either going to have to hire him or tell him to quit. Because what if he gets hurt? We got to have him on workman's comp." And so the local manager said, "Well, he won't quit." "Well, then he's hired." I look up to Harold. Who do you look up to? And who looks up to you? That's the other side of this teaching that Paul said to the Thessalonians. They looked up to Paul and Silvanus and Timothy. They imitated their behavior as followers of Christ. But that's not why Paul mentions this. Paul mentions this because he has heard others talk about the faith of the Thessalonians. They aren't seeking fame about this. They're simply living faithful lives. They're acting in ways that honor Christ. They're serving the living God. And it's getting noticed. And that's what we need to do. We need to act in ways that honor Christ. We need to live faithful lives, whether they be quiet or they be really out there. Because we need to be Christ in the world, because Christ needs to be in the world, and we need to do it so much so that people start talking about St. Luke. And my guess is that you're already doing this. The two guys I mentioned didn't do the things that they did so that they would stand out. They just went about living their quiet, faithful lives. And my guess is that you're already doing that. And you know what? You're likely not seeing the impact that it's having around you. You may think that you're not doing anything in the world, but that's because you aren't doing it for recognition. You're doing it because that's what Jesus calls us to do. Jesus calls us to serve others. Jesus calls us to make a difference in the lives of the people that we encounter. Dan McGrail did it through his kindness. Harold did it through his natural service to everyone. And we have plenty of examples in this world of people who are not good examples, right? I was struck the other day, there was a famous pastor who demanded respect, and even went so far as to say that if anybody disrespected them, that they were on their way to hell. We have way too many examples of people that we should not look up to. Let's not be one of those. The world needs more positive role models. And so I ask, who do you look up to? And who looks up to you? How are you making an impact? How are you living as an example for others to imitate? How are you modeling Christ in the world? Amen. One of the ways in which we imitate Christ is by furthering His kingdom in this world, and we can do that very easily through our tithes and our offerings. Will the ushers